Yeah.
Bullish and purple off for a few weeks.
Yeah.
Seems like an eternity.
Yeah, especially with the volume of things that's been going on
Oh,
lately. It's
nothing.
like,
We didn't miss anything.
yeah,
Nah. Yeah,
yeah, it's
right.
easy. It's no biggie. Nothing important happened.
Wow. And it's still going downhill or uphill, however you want to look at it,
Yeah.
for all sides. It's just like, when's the chaos gonna stop?
Well, it's interesting that you should phrase it that way because I've been trying to sort of put into context some of the events, of the week, and as far as just to get started, like things that have happened. And there was the debate, there was the trial of Trump, the actual verdict that came down, and all the House hearings that have followed that. I mean, have been to me interesting. I watch those kind of things to see what the questions that are asked and how people respond to them and stuff like that. And it's like, so what I've been thinking about is just trying to put it in a framework. And as far as ending the chaos goes, I think a lot of it has to do with skepticism. I think
Totally.
we need people that are more skeptic of the parties.
Yep.
And to my way of thinking, honestly, a lot of it has to do with being more skeptic about the Democrats, because this is something that I talked to Linda about and have for years. Because I'm an old hack with all the third party stuff going on forever. But it's like my impression of most of the conservative people I know and people who vote Republican. So let's start off by saying that there is a difference between Republicans, who are like dyed in the wool party people, and people who
Yep.
typically vote for Republicans. And I would
Right.
say the same thing is true of Democrats. You've got your dyed in the wool, blue hearted Democrats who really actually like the Democrats, and then huge swaths of people who vote for Democrats.
Right.
And the people who vote for Republicans generally hate the Republican Party and just happen to hate the Democratic Party more.
Right.
But the thing that's always struck me, and of course, this is coming from a California, born and raised, lived here most of my life, is that, yeah, Democrats hate the Republicans, but there's this weird sense that the Democrats, are more or less okay and sort of
Right.
straightforward. And after watching some of the things that have gone on lately, especially, the debate, I think it's time for people to wrap their heads around the fact that the Democrats are not okay. And what they've done in this election cycle, especially, it's time for the great awakening of people in this country to be like, we get the Republicans are bad, the Democrats are bad too.
No question about it. And it's so funny because, and that's the part I struggle with is how do you kind of break through that? And I do think it's starting to happen naturally,
Mm-hmm.
in many ways, regardless, again, whatever side you're on. And yeah, I do think the Democrats have benefited, at least by the perception that things were not as crazy. Well, they proved they could be just as crazy.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, because it's kind of remarkable. And part of it too was like, I mean, I have to admit, before, I've been thinking about maybe what I was going to say for the last, hour or so before we came on the air, just trying to organize my thoughts. And
Yeah.
I'm like all over the board. So I mean,
Me
if I'm
too.
like talking crazy, then you can slap me around a little bit and bring
I'm
me
with
back
you,
to
man.
reality.
I'm with
but
you.
but there's this sort of this thought that I had when I was watching parts of the debate. Now, I think if you look at the debate, the general consensus is that Biden just fell right down on his face.
Yeah. Totally went down in flames.
And so, I mean, I think so. Sort of in a general way, people look at Biden now and they say he's not capable of being the president. But that doesn't mean that they're not going to vote for him.
Oh, no, they
And
will.
so, I was going to say that, but the reason for that is because the hatred and mistrust of Trump is so great that
Yep.
even though people agree now that Biden is not fit for the office, they still feel that electing someone who is unfit is better than electing someone who is dangerous.
Right.
But here's where the thought for me gets interesting. most of the things that I hear about Trump and most of the things that people say about him largely are things that have been repeated over and over again by the Democrats. And I'm not saying that there's not reasons to dislike Trump, because I don't like Trump. I'm not a Republican. But if you can't trust what the Democrats have told you about Trump, because you frankly can't trust the Democrats about anything they've been saying in the last 4 years, then that changes the paradigm for me slightly, saying that, okay, well, maybe we need to go back and look again at what Trump's policies were, what things that were actually going on in the country at the time. And this is where I'm kind of going with the whole thing about skepticism, which is, instead of listening to what you're told and doing what you're told, it's time to start observing the world and making decisions on your own about the circumstances where you are and what you actually see and can interact with. Because we're not being told the truth in the media.
Oh, not on any side.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. And that again, because of this weird political industrial complex that's been created, it's not, the media is just not incented to do what they're supposed to be doing.
Right.
And I hate saying that because I kind of grew up in that world, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but now it's become a business. It's always been a business. Don't get me wrong. I can tell you stories back when I was a journalist and some of the things that we're not going to go quite with what you wrote kind of thing. I
Yeah.
mean, back 30, 40 years ago. So it's always been a business to a certain degree, but now it's just gotten so clearly blatant that it's sad. And so we do have to, it's kind of like being your own doctor in a way
Mm-hmm.
anymore. Not that any of us
Yeah.
are qualified, but you have to be your own best advocate.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the way it is now. And so I totally agree with what you're saying. The challenge with it is, uh, and we're subject to it the last few weeks because we both got tied up in different things and got
Yeah.
busy and we couldn't do it. And we're like really sort of probably more geeky about this than
Yeah. I think
80,
that's fair to
80 or
say.
90% of the other people out there, right? I mean,
Yeah.
and so that's the big thing is I still don't believe the vast majority of people really they probably have heard a little bit that Biden melted down or Trump
Mm-hmm.
did this or whatever, the Trump trial, whatever, but they really are still totally tuned out, the
Oh,
vast majority of people. And and that's this kind of the scary part. So then it's going to come down to this last month or two and just it's going to be just chaos, I'm afraid, you
yeah.
know. But
Yeah.
all the more reason in my mind is, and I had this discussion last night. I was at an event and I was talking to various people I knew there, and to a person there, I never even brought it up most of the time, but most people are just like feeling like you are. That this two-party thing is just screwy,
Yeah.
but
It's no good.
um, this was an event that involved some local politicians and things like that, and everybody agreed that's where the action is.
Yeah.
It's like they've almost to a person basically said, I'm not even worried. I'm just totally tuned out, particularly
Mm-hmm.
about the federal stuff and most of the state stuff. And this is where the action is. We got to figure out. And this was a discussion about the Green Oaks Ranch thing. I don't know if you've heard much about that, but it was on my list because Linda had sent us
Yeah.
information about the Sunbreak Ranch. So
Yep.
it's kind of in relationship with that it's again another way to deal with the homeless thing and all that, which we might get into. Um, but that's where everybody was animated and everybody really had to have those discussions. And it's like, not that you want to totally turn a blind eye to what's going on at the federal level, but are you going to make any difference? And the only place you're going to start making a difference is we've got to start from the bottom up and
Yep.
start, and I told one of the politicians there, who's a Democrat, while I was there, I said, hey, man, I love you. I'm going to vote for you because I like what you're doing. But I'm not. I'm done. I'm not registered anymore as a Democrat.
Yeah.
And he didn't fight back. He said, I know. Yeah, I know where everybody's head's at, you know? So,
Yeah. And as I say, the reason that, one of the many reasons I enjoy doing this podcast is because I do feel like there's a flicker of hope out there. There are people that are changing your minds. And I know
yes.
for me, part of what influences me to think is not necessarily big groups or big media, but people I
No.
talk to, little things that I stumble across when I'm looking at things on the web. It's not always big media outputs or
No.
input from, national groups. And that's exactly right. We have to start pushing things in the right direction. But like the Democrat politician that you were talking to, I think at some point, and this goes back to my thing about saying the Democrats are okay. At some point, there has to be enough of a push to say, okay, I know you're a Democrat, and I know that there's a lot of political machinery that is involved with the Democrat Party and all that stuff. But that's exactly what needs to be dismantled.
Exactly.
As long as people in California, especially, and I think this is applicable across the entire country, but for sure in California, as long as everybody just sort of falls back into the arms of the Democrats over and over again, we're just
Mhm.
going to keep getting the same thing. You
Right.
can't you can't change things as long as you're saying, okay, I'm so afraid of the Republicans that I'm just going to go ahead and be
Right.
part of the Democrats,
Right.
because you can't move anything in California. You can't make progress anywhere
Right.
when everything is controlled by party. And no matter how much people want to disavow themselves from the party and say, I'm really an independent thinker, I'm just running from a Democrat from this reason or that reason, when you're getting money from the Democrats, even if you're saying that, hey, I'm an independent thinker, that is so much pressure on you to be involved
Totally.
in what the Democrat messages and what the Democrats want to do, that you're not going to move the needle away from the Democrats. It's too beneficial for you. And as I
Yep.
say, we have to get to the point where people can say the Democrats are not okay. We can't just keep falling back into the arms of the Democrats.
Yeah.
And until we can make that movement, national, local,
Right.
I mean, it's going to be so hard to do anything.
Well, and again, in an odd way, the whole Biden meltdown hopefully is kind of a good thing in that it's kind of really laid bare, to your point, how crazy and screwed up the Democrats are, just like the Republicans, and maybe even more so in some ways. And
Yeah.
the fact that so many just continue to just waffle about, oh, I'm riding with Biden and all this kind of stuff,
You got
kind
to
of
put
thing.
the
It's
slogans.
like, okay, you know, I get it. That's kind of the party line, although I think it's changing.
Yeah.
But more importantly, I think it is making people wake up who are Democrats that says this has gone on too long, you know,
Well,
we do need to make some changes.
the thing about, sort of like the wider policy too, and in the Democrats in this particular presidential cycle, the fact that the Democrats, well, they did two things. They basically got rid of their primary
Yep.
so that there really wasn't one.
Right.
And they covered up, just how damaged Biden really was. If they had not done those two things, if they'd had a primary and they had been honest about Biden, then Biden wouldn't be their nominee right now.
Right.
But what they did is, I mean, it is so corrupt to take away the vote from the people in the primary to hang on to Biden, and now to be talking about potentially removing Biden from the ticket. That means there's no input from anybody.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
and to me, that's just nuts. I just don't know how anyone can support that in this cycle. I mean, to me,
Right.
it's flabbergasting.
Right. Well, time will tell is what they do. I mean, they're talking
Yeah.
about they're going to do some kind of super fast primary kind of thing or whatever, but it's like,
Yeah.
okay, well, good luck with that. I mean, it takes 3 or 4 months just to get them to write their name down on something. So it's like,
Yeah.
I don't know, but yeah, I guess I'm trying to look at the bright side of it in regards to hopefully at least it does bring to the forefront just how screwed up the whole system is on every side of it. And again, I agree with you. Democrats probably have had a little bit easier time of it perception wise,
Mhm.
but not anymore.
Well, as I say, I hope so, because again, you can't build, you're not going to successfully build an organization. You're not going to have a new voice come along because like take California, and again, maybe I'm being too California centric these days, but like what percentage of the voters in California vote Republican? Let's say it's 30%.
Right.
And then, you have 70% of voters voting Democrat. Well, if you created a new party and you consumed the entire Republican Party, you'd still just be a minority that wouldn't be any better off than the Republicans are.
Right.
You can't make progress. You can't change things. You can't change the dynamic unless you start pulling people away from the Democrats. And as long as there's just like this in the back of everybody's brain, it's like, well, the Democrats, they're fine. They're not really doing anything. I like the Democrats.
Right.
As long as people fall back on that, you're just nowhere. So, I mean, I guess I'm on my, wipe out the Democrat crusade from this point on. But I mean, it's like that. There has to be movement there.
No, there does. But I, like we talked before, I don't even know if you need that many people. I mean, there's more independent and quote unquote,
yeah,
non-party people than there are Republicans.
Yeah.
So the numbers are there, but whether they act like independents or not is very questionable, obviously.
Yeah, because that also, as someone who, has been vocal about third parties literally forever, I think, and people who know me well enough kind of know that, like, okay, this is the crazy guy who's going to like start talking about his crazy third party stuff. And so it's like, I get a lot of people who tell me, oh, I'm basically an independent, and I don't know if that's, paying deference to me because, I mean, let's face it, that's the way life works. You do try and be kind and considerate of others and you do pay them deference. But by and large, most of the people who tell me that, when push comes to shove,
oh yeah,
they vote for the Democrats.
Yeah, well, and that's why I just want to, for us to keep repeating over and over and over again, particularly when you're in states like California on the Democrat side, or you're in whatever, Alabama on the Republican side, that we are in the position where we can make the change happen better than you can in, say, Michigan, where it could go either way, right? I mean, a few 100,000 votes, one way or the other, could change a lot of things. Here, no difference. And so it's like, that's why everybody I see, I keep telling them, I'm not voting Democrat on anything because it's not going to make any difference, particularly presidential. It's not going to make any difference whatsoever. We're not going to sway any election. We may swing. I mean, if enough people did it, we could maybe swing, a House member somewhere, because some of those get close, 15, 20,000 votes. But odds are, at least in our district, 49th, Mike Levin's been there. He's an incumbent for a couple terms now. So incumbents, man, they've got such a huge, and again, doesn't matter where you're an incumbent, whether you're Republican or Democrat, you got such a huge advantage. But if you don't need a huge amount of people to leverage it.
Right.
And I was reminded, I keep getting reminded of that when, if you follow any of the French elections that went on and the UK elections that went on, I mean, it was really, those were all very close. They didn't turn out anything like people thought. And it all came down to these little coalitions that kind of banded together. And in France, they thought it was going to be, this really right-wing person, and all the little coalitions came together and reversed that trend.
Yeah.
And in the UK, there was a lot of surprises there as well. And it was through the coalition. In fact, they're not even sure if they're going to be able to have a government. They can't get enough coalition building together. But in my mind, that's kind of a good thing, that if you got 3 or 4 parties that have to kind of do some jockeying and figuring out the right things, you can make some progress that becomes a much more optimized solution for whatever the issue is, right?
Yeah.
So those two, they just happened the same time we were off. That it was like, hey, neither one of them are pretty. It wasn't a pretty process, but it proved a point how these smaller groups can really make a difference.
Yeah, and that's absolutely. I mean, I just couldn't agree with you more. And that's absolutely what we're aiming for. I mean, we're coalition purple. We're not compromise purple.
That's right.
So
Exactly.
that's exactly right. And I think it does have to start in a place like California, or some place, as I say, that has this very wide span. Because
Why?
look,
Yeah.
okay, if you're in Michigan and you're like, oh my God, my
Right.
state is going to decide the presidential election. I mean,
Right.
obviously, you're going to have to think long and hard about what you want
Yeah.
to do.
Absolutely.
But if in a state like California, which has a huge population, you could begin the roots of a movement and you could create, policy and an ideology that's actually appealing to people, and that could take root in a place where there's nothing except Democrats anyway,
Yeah.
then you could start expanding that into a national party. So it really does have to start in a place that has the makeup of a California, I think, which
Yeah.
is, and the fact that there are more and more people in California sort of latching onto that and becoming aware of things. I,
Oh yeah.
I just think it's a really good thing.
Yeah. Well, and hopefully, because of the episode with Biden, that there are some, it's awakened some Democrats to the fact that, hey, there are other options here if we
Yeah.
all kind of come together.
Well, I
You
really
would
think it'll
hope.
be interesting too to see just what percentage of the vote RFK Jr. gets. And I've said this a lot of times that I'm not 100% on board with everything that RFK says or
Right.
does. But at the same time, like, there's no point really voting for Trump in California. It's not going to win California.
No.
And if you find Biden to be completely unacceptable, which at this point I think most people should, vote RFK. And
Right.
because, again, he's not going to win, but that's not the
No.
point. The point is to demonstrate that there are enough people in the state of California, particularly,
Yep.
that are not willing to play this stupid two-party game anymore. And
Yep.
then if you can get somebody like RFK to get a significant number of the votes, then people can start looking at it and saying, all right, there is a huge room out here to create something new, enough that, you could start affecting things greatly.
Right.
But again, because part of this is because of, things I've heard from coming from the Ford Party and other places.
Right.
You're not going to get it started if you're going to say, the Democrats are all right. It's okay.
Right. Yeah. We got, we all agree, even because there's, some middle ground Republicans that are part of that
Mhm.
said, okay, well, whatever we do, we don't want Trump. So, we're going to just go with the flow here.
Yeah.
Which is, sad. One other, and I agree with you on the RFK thing, because that's kind of probably where in that particular race, I got to place my vote somewhere. Why not?
Yeah.
Um, but I don't know if you heard about this other group forming by Adam Kittinger. He was the House member along with Cheney who, pushed on the
Oh, I think it's
impeachment.
Kinzinger. Is it Kinzinger?
Kitzinger, yes. And I just watched a short video he did, and he's starting a thing called Country First, I think it is.
Mm.
That again, it's going right back to this thing. We got to get back to some common sense solutions, and so the interesting thing with him is he's a bit of a younger guy. He's understanding there we got to bring all these different people together and figure it out. And while he didn't say third party, the sense you got is okay. We're starting down this road.
Yeah.
And his whole point is we got to break the two-party system up, right?
And
We got a
it's
lot of people that want to do that. It's just who can ever gain traction. He does have somewhat of a name. He's pretty articulate,
Mhm.
and all that. So he's going to be an interesting person to watch.
Well, one thing that's always fascinating is you get kicked out
Yeah,
and you realize real fast that there's you don't need to toe the party line anymore. You don't need to lie about this or that anymore, and it is amazing how fast people find their way to the middle. I mean, it's
and
absolutely remarkable.
oh yeah, it's hilarious because so many have been retiring lately, and as
Mhm.
soon as they announce their retirement, all of a sudden
Yeah, all the
they're
bullshit.
truth seekers. It's like, and there, I mean, again, those are all great examples of why this is so screwed up. You
Yeah.
can't tell you can't talk the truth to power, all that crap they always talk about
Mhm.
until you actually know you're out of the game.
Yeah. And,
It's
that's
like,
and as I say, and it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier about how it's nice that there are politicians in California that are sort of saying, yeah, the party thing is not so good. But until Kinzinger, broke the grip of the Republicans,
yep,
which funded him and put him there and ran his campaign and bought all this stuff, until he broke away from that because he got voted out of office,
yeah,
he
yeah,
toed the party line. He only
right,
stopped towing the party line when he stopped being part of the party. And as I
yep,
say, I just feel like that's what has to happen.
yep. Oh yeah, no, absolutely. And then and on again on all sides, because it's always so funny when you do listen to these news reports, and they always talk in these vague terms about, well, there's a lot of whatever Republicans or Democrats, whatever the
Mm-hmm.
topic is at the time, that really don't want this to happen,
Mm-hmm.
but they're going to vote for it anyways. It's like,
Right.
you
That's
know,
what I say.
what
I
happened
feel
to
like
it?
that's what we're here for, to tell people, look, you don't have to do that. There are, even right now, there are other parties. I mean, hell, you could vote for the
Yeah,
Libertarian Party and try and
yeah.
boost them up. You could vote for the Green Party, try and boost them up. I mean, at least it's something that breaks the death grip of the two parties.
Well, and to your point, it doesn't really matter who you vote as long as it's not one of the two parties,
Right.
because it'll all total up, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it'll continue to prove the point. And so yeah, what a crazy couple of weeks.
Yeah, nuts. And I didn't even, honestly, I didn't even scratch the surface of some of the things that I
Oh,
was
I
thinking.
know.
I was going to get into the Supreme Court decisions and the
Oh my
dissent,
gosh.
and the fact that, there were individual dissents, and there's like three or four actually really interesting different Supreme Court rulings. I didn't get into really talk about
Yeah.
any of the rulings in the Trump case and the fact that they've now delayed the sentencing on that. Oh my God, my brain's about to melt.
Oh, I know. Well, yeah, yeah. And no, I mean, yeah, we could just do a whole podcast just on the Supreme Court stuff, because
Yeah.
that's again, some of it I actually didn't have a problem with when they real like on the, and I know we're running out of time here, but
Hmm.
when they kind of ruled on the Boise case that involved the homeless thing, that
Yeah.
you can't criminalize homelessness
Hmm.
idea, which at one level I totally agree with, but it doesn't do a whole lot of good to throw people in jail, because that's not really getting them help.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, who really wants to have tent cities on their sidewalks
Right.
everywhere, right? And that's so. I think the good part of the Boise decision initially was at least it's gotten people sensitized to the issue,
Yeah.
and so. But now that it's going away, I don't think it'll. I don't think it's going to really. I think most communities have realized, whether that's there or not, we need to figure out something, because whether we don't want to put them all in jail,
Right, and that's the thing. You can't jail is not the right place.
yeah,
You
and we
want
don't put them all in emergency rooms,
right, which is definitely not the right place.
right, right. And so it's like, so I think in one way, the previous decision did have an effect that at least people are a little more, have a bigger view of things.
Yeah,
So the fact that it's going away, I know a lot, again, going back to the Democrats and stuff, they're all thinking it's the most god awful thing in the world and all this kind of stuff. But
mm.
but you kind of go, and because I've been involved in some of these things, you go back and peel back some of the layers, and it all comes back to, well, I want to fund this little program I had. And
Right.
it all comes back to the money. It's like, okay, well, the program may not be good. I don't know. But it all comes back to money. And it's like, well, we have thrown billions at this in California,
Yeah,
and it's only going up.
yeah,
And but so I, we'll have to maybe spend some time on the whole Supreme Court stuff and
yeah.
all that on our next
Well,
go
one
round.
thing that I would just add, just before we end, just because I want to reiterate this point, one of the big platform items for any new party should be mental health issues, because
Absolutely.
the mental health policy in this country is appalling.
Yep.
And we actually brought up. I'm trying to now, for the life of me, it's skipping my mind. The new facility they're building out here, or they have
So,
proposed.
well, they're trying to Sunbreak Ranch.
Right, and the idea of that is exactly,
Yeah.
yeah, that's exactly what I think should be done. You can't, you know, just put down a tent on the sidewalk because the sidewalks are designated as places for people to walk, not to mention the fact that
Exactly.
it's a violation of the ADA. But
Yeah.
it's like you don't want to jail them, but you need to have a place where they can get away from the insanity,
Yep.
have options and have help. And
Yeah.
that's, I think that's the way to go. And the Supreme Court decisions opens the door for that because it forces people to look at things in a different way.
Absolutely. And I definitely would like to spend some more time on that one because that one seems it kind of checked off all the check marks that you brought up a couple
Mm-hmm.
weeks ago in terms of, hey, we've got all this land,
Yeah.
and they're talking about being kind of in the middle of Miramar, which has got, I don't know,
Oh my God, it's
tens of
vast.
thousands and
Yeah.
thousands of acres, right? And they just want like 500
Yeah.
acres. So you're not impacting neighborhoods and all this kind of
Exactly.
stuff, but
Exactly.
getting them away from the environment that they're in and have different kinds of environment because not
Right.
everybody's the same, right? We can't
Yeah.
keep trying to build these one size
Size
fits
fits
all.
all.
It
Exactly.
just is not working. It never will work.
Yeah.
And so that's just a really fascinating. And I brought that up to a couple of people, the Sunbreak Ranch, up to a couple of these people last night because they want to kind of do this big thing here in Vista. And it's like, why isn't the county getting behind this other? And they are somewhat, from
Yeah.
what I read, but that's the solution. I mean, it's in the middle of the county, basically, and it's not near places, and it got all these different supporting services that you ultimately need. You just can't throw people out in the middle of nowhere and not have any services for them.
And the thing
And
is, too, that it's kind of an interesting anomaly about California is like the entire population of California basically is on this little strip on the coast of California.
it's,
So the entire eastern and central
oh,
parts of California is basically
unbelievable.
so if you wanted to, every county in California could build a facility a little bit east of where the main population center is. That would still be close to where people originate from, not all
Yep.
that far, but you'd
Yep.
be out of the city, out of the congestion, away from the drugs, in a better environment with an opportunity to get better or at
Yes.
least maintain the status quo. And as I
Yeah.
say, if we say took the bullet train money, the billions we have for that, and put it into mental health, think of all the good you could do.
Uh, yeah, that would be a better mode of transportation as far as getting people to a better, faster recovery, right?
Yeah. I hear for
Man,
the bullet train, they're going to finally get like the Barstow to Fresno tracks laid.
what a
Fantastic.
disaster. What a disaster. And it's one of those things. It's like, again, we're not in the concentration of the East,
Mm-hmm.
some of the Eastern cities where
Right. It
mass
would be
transit
difficult.
makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
You're talking about one of the largest geographic wise states. It's like, and like you said, it's going nowhere.
Yeah. Oh, well.
All right. Yeah. Well, welcome to California, right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, we got probably a long list of things to start working on for next week, but
Oh, yeah.
finally,
Tons
so
of
glad to
things.
catch up.
Yeah. No, it was great. And it'll be good to hit it up again next week. And this was
Yep.
fun. And as I say, I look forward to it.